So here we are with a legendary game, a truly legendary epic game that has made people lose their minds for about 20 years now, a little bit over that. So much so the game is getting a full remake, but that's not what today's video is about. You already know the game, it doesn't really need to be hyped up. It's Final Fantasy VII, one of the most important and greatest RPGs ever, really popularizing RPGs in America at least. Since then, there's been many imitations and many more games, but none of them have lived up to the hype that is Final Fantasy VII. And I thought before the remake comes out, I should look at the original game. So here's my ultimate critique, in-depth review of Final Fantasy VII, the not remake, the original game we're looking at. So let's just get right into it. When it comes to the story of Final Fantasy VII, I am keeping this spoiler free, especially since the remake is coming out. I will give a very basic plot synopsis. The game starts out with Cloud Strife getting off a train in the city of Midgar, a city run on nuclear energy. Well, you and your band of misfits get off the train and are blowing up a nuclear reactor that's polluting the planet. And that's about all I'm going to say. Obviously, you blow up the reactor and meet up with all of Cloud's buddies to take on his arch nemesis Sephiroth, and so much more. Like, actually, so much more. So much so that, it's just ridiculous. So many people think Midgar is where Final Fantasy VII takes place primarily, and while I can say you are there more than anywhere else, you actually go all over the world in this game, like all over it. To say that the story of Final Fantasy VII and its characters and its world is gaming legends is just an understatement, really. Like, I can just really not explain in words how good this story is, but I will try. The story and its plot developments are just phenomenal. The game is so expertly paced, like it's ridiculously well paced, even for modern times. The game keeps moving at such a fast rate, never getting boring in the slightest. Even when the game occasionally slows down, it's purely for story-heavy purposes, and it's just well done. It's expertly written in many aspects, and the story told is just amazing. The beginning is legendary, the twists and turns are epic, and the ending, while a little abrupt, is still awesome. I think the story is just so good. There is not a single part of it that I don't like. I just think it's all just told wonderfully, and it could just never be recreated again. It's just so freaking good. One reason it's so great is the characters. This is another RPG where I just have a seriously hard time finding a single character I don't like. I think every single character in the game is just great. I'm not exaggerating, like every single one. Every character has a purpose and a reason and has motivation. Nobody just seems to be here. Nobody feels phoned in. Nobody feels like they're useless. Cloud is a great protagonist. He's not just some mute who doesn't have an opinion. No, not at all. He is the best arc of any of the characters in the game by far, and just comes so far throughout the game. He completely changes throughout the game. It's just kind of staggering. Just an excellent character arc that is really unmatched in almost any other RPG. Even any other Final Fantasy. I'm having a hard time thinking of another Final Fantasy protagonist that changes as much as he does. And it's not like Cloud is the only star of the show. The other party members have such extensive depth as well. All of them not only have huge backstories, but also evolve quite a bit throughout the story, especially Tifa. She is the second most character development in the game by far, and really just goes on this journey with Cloud. There's a reason she's like one of the most beloved characters in Final Fantasy, and I would argue she's probably the most beloved female character in Final Fantasy, like, period. Other fantastic characters like Barrett just have such excellent arcs where he questions if he's doing the right thing and what Marlene, his daughter, would like. Literally even a wolf that can talk to you has a great character arc when you learn about his people, his grandfather who he's been around with forever, literally hundreds of years. I will say some character arcs are better and stronger than others, but there is not a single bad one in the game. Even the side characters are really well developed as well. And some of them are almost so well developed that they might as well be main characters, like the Turks, who really are just a bunch of goons in reality, but have such good characters and just great personalities that they would actually go on to get their own game. And then there was the antagonist, Sephiroth. Well, without spoilers, I will just say he is great. You really come to hate him throughout the game, and he just becomes a real douchebag. He's a great story as to why he's this way as well. He's one of, if not my favorite RPG villain, like, ever. Like, period. He's just really good. There's so much depth to him. He's not just an asshole for the sake of being mean and evil. There's just so much more there. Like, the world in this game is also really good. There is just so much lore to the world. There's so much history behind the world. It feels so unique and different from even other Final Fantasy games. Every city has its own backstory as to why it's there, how long it's been there, the story of the ocean, the life stream behind it. It's just expertly done. I know at this point it just sounds like I'm completely blinded to any negative aspects of the game, and I'm possibly a fanboy, probably a fanboy. Well, you're probably right to some extent, but I think you would be really hard pressed to find any glaring issues or faults with the stories, its characters, and the world/lore in the game in general. Sure, sometimes Cloud has some internal issues that can be a little much and slow the game down, but it's honestly such an insignificant amount of time that I just don't think so. Or maybe another part where a party member or two isn't with you, but even then I thought this was totally unique and different. The game is just constantly mixing it up for you and never gets old. Like, no matter how many times I play through the game, it just really doesn't get old. But I really have no issues with the characters, the world, or the plot development with this game. Every character has a real purpose, the story is just really fulfilling, and it's for sure my favorite Final Fantasy story. While other games have great, fantastic stories, and they can even come really close to this one, none of them top this one in my opinion. But I'm wrapping it up with the story now. Let's talk about the gameplay. It's clear I like the story. There are two types of gameplay in the game, and that's pretty standard for a Final Fantasy game. There is the battles and everything else you do outside the battles. Let us go over what you can do outside the battles first. Outside of the battles, you play as Cloud, of course. You can walk and even run through these pre-rendered backgrounds. Yes, all the game uses pre-rendered backgrounds, where it's basically like you're running around a painting. Everything is super flat or slightly isometric. There's no true 3D environments in the game besides the overworld. In the overworld, you can only run around in this not pre-rendered background, as you can see. Everything you can interact with, though, is in 3D and not part of the pre-rendered background. There are a variety of things to interact with, such as switches, chests, items, and people, of course. This is really par for the course for a JRPG, where it involves you talking to NPCs, getting information, buying items, finding items, and solving the occasional puzzle or two. But there is a lot of exploring to be done, despite how small some of these areas are. There's nothing really out of the ordinary for your standard JRPG, and it's all pretty basic and everything you've come to expect with the genre for the last 20 years when it comes to exploring the area. But you have to remember that Final Fantasy VII kind of set that standard for the next couple years of what is a standard JRPG. While it didn't, of course, create any of these ideas or tropes or style of gameplay, it certainly popularized it and brought it to the mainstream. And that's all I have to say about what you're going to be doing outside of battle, because that's really what you do, is just explore areas and interact with people, objects, items, etc. Speaking of battles, let's get into them. The game has random encounters through and through. You never actually see the enemy, you always get jumped. In battles, you have 3 party members out at a time, and you can face up to like 8 or 9 enemies at once. The game uses Final Fantasy's tried and true active time battle system, where a bar fills up. Once the bar fills up, you get a turn to do whatever you're going to do. You can do a couple things in battle. You can attack, where it is simply just an attack with whatever weapon they're equipped with. You can use magic, which is where they use whatever magic you have equipped to that character. This, of course, uses MP, which is your magic points. And shocking revelation, you do not regenerate MP or health. You can use an item, which there are a variety of in the game, and I'm not going to go into detail about those. And then lastly, you can defend, which is where you just block. Those are the main commands you can give out once it's your turn in battle. Now, this game actually has a limit bar. To fill the limit bar, you get attacked by enemies. The limit bar will just kind of fill up naturally as you do battle, as it carries over for each battle. However, if you actually die, you do lose all your limit. Once you've been attacked enough, the bar will fill up, and then you get to use your limit break. This is basically a super move that you can perform. Every character has their own limit break. In fact, every character has 7 different limit breaks. Besides the first one, you have to unlock the other ones through various means, with the last one being unlocked through a side area or side plot. These limit breaks just totally kick ass, and when you get one, you should not use it immediately. You gotta save it for the right time. However, you cannot do a standard attack when your limit is full. Those are the standard commands you have in battle. You see, throughout the entire game, you come across many other skills that you can equip to your characters. Skills such as Steel or Sense and many, many more. I'll go over those in just a second. The battle system in this game really is just timeless. Honestly, it will never be outdated, and it's just really not possible for it to be outdated. Can it be a little slow? Sometimes, yeah. And does it follow the standard Final Fantasy formula again? Yeah, it does. I'm not gonna lie. But still, it's just so good. Like, the battle system is just excellent. It's nothing groundbreaking or even that original for the series, but it's still great. The limit breaks add another layer of depth to the combat, making it even more engaging. I really like the battle system, if you couldn't tell. But okay, let's talk about the equipment in the game, because this is actually pretty big. So Final Fantasy VII has its own unique style of equipment that has never been seen again in the main series for some reason, and that is materia. You see, every character has weapon, armor, accessory slot. Weapon and armor have the usual stats seen in pretty much every RPG: attack, defense, hit ratio, etc. There isn't anything exciting there. The accessory slot is also pretty standard, as it's just an accessory. And yeah, it's just an accessory. See, but your weapon and armor have slots on them. These circles are known as materia. Now, it is completely dependent on the weapons or armor for how many slots you get, but basically a lot of your equipment, spells, and other little nuances are tied to materia. For instance, the ice spell is the ice materia, and you just equip it onto anyone's materia slot. Sure, some characters have a better magic stat than others, but any character can have magic spells. You just equip the magic materia. But all the extra Final Fantasy moves that are usually present in these games are materia. Summons are a materia. Steal is a materia. Even counter is a materia. So you just equip it to the materia slot, and there you go. That character is the move now. There are even more nuances. Like, some materia slots are connected to each other. So if you, say, give it a fire spell, but then you give it the all materia, then the fire spell attacks all enemies now. Or if you have heal, and then it's with all, it heals all your party members. It really lets you experiment with a bunch of different ideas, and you'll almost always get a result. And on top of that, materia actually levels up as well. So not only do your characters level up, which is very standard for any RPG, you get materia experience. You just finish a battle and you get experience. XP for your characters levels them up, and then you get materia experience, its own separate experience, which levels up that materia. For magic materia, it makes it much more powerful versions of the spells, and for other materia, it's something different almost every time. But even the materia levels up. It's one of the main focuses, if not like the main focus of the gameplay, is the materia. More so than ever, your equipment and levels. Like, it's way more important than those. It's all about the materia. But that's really the gameplay for Final Fantasy VII. Really, it's exploring generally flat environments, exploring the 3D world, or its battle system, and that's the sum of its parts. The gameplay is honestly timeless and is just fantastic. But let's shift over to the graphics, which I will be honest are not as timeless. While I'm sure the graphics looked great when it came out in 1997, they haven't exactly aged the best. All the colors pop and everything is very obvious as what it's supposed to be, so at least you don't have to use your imagination. However, all the 3D has aged very poorly. Let's start with the character models. When you're out in the world, the models look pretty bad, even for the time. Like, they just didn't really look that great. Like, even for the time, I guess they were passable, but they just look kind of goofy now with incorrect body proportions, blocky hands, and stiff animations. The 3D models when you're running around in the world just don't look that great, and they just look like very early 3D graphics. I would say it's probably the worst aged part of the entire game, in all honesty, is the models when you're exploring the world. During battle, the models get actually much more detail and actually look pretty good, especially for the time. Why they couldn't just use these models the whole time, I do not know. That's not the case though. These models have a lot more detail, proportionate body parts, and much better animations. They are literally better in every single way. Final Fantasy VIII would actually improve this and just have the same models when you're running around the world and battle, but this game does not. Any other 3D objects in the world look generally pretty bad as well, but there are not that many other 3D models in the world aside from the models, the character models themselves, which have not aged well, if I haven't said that. When it comes to the textures in the game, there's really only like 1 or 2 3D textures actually, and that's on the world map, and these just look rough. They're generally very blurry. Like I mentioned much earlier in the review, the whole game uses pre-rendered backgrounds minus the overworld. While for the time it looked great and you're running around on a painting, I guess, it's also aged. The biggest problem is that the quality of them isn't exactly the greatest, especially on a modern TV or monitor. It just comes off looking a bit blurry. They still look good, but have definitely lost some of their charm. I still love the whole running around still backgrounds though. I think it's fine and I kind of like it. But it's dated. It just is dated. The rest of the graphics look very dated compared to other stuff on the PS1, including other Final Fantasy games. The game uses many pre-rendered cutscenes which actually looked fantastic for the time, and they even look alright today. These look fantastic when they use the battle models and not the blocky world models, but in all seriousness they look great. Some transitions that use 3D objects or models with the pre-rendered backgrounds, I will be honest, just look terrible. They look super janky, are extremely choppy for some reason, but this only happens a few times in the game and that's it. I guess the last thing to mention for the graphics would be the frame rate, which I didn't have any issues with. It was steady, smooth, pretty much the entire time, so that was good. As a whole, the graphics were okay when they came out, but looking back, they really just aren't up to snuff like at all. But, I mean, at least they have a decent charm to them, right? The blocky fists and everything. Okay, maybe not. They're classic, at least, I will say. But, in all honesty, the graphics, you're just going to have to overlook those in this day and age because they have not aged very well at all. They're just not very good. Something, though, that has aged much better in this game is the sound. The sound in this game is nothing short of perfection, in all honesty, and that's not even an overstatement. I just have no issues with this at all. There's no voice acting in the game, it's all text, which is fine for me. I feel that while the animations might be stiff and shallow and generally shitty, they're still able to get their point across with the text, at least. The sound effects are all really good. Everything sounds right, and I thought even the most powerful moves sounded just extremely powerful. Defeating enemies is very satisfying, and I just generally thought that laying everything out was awesome. I thought all the sound effects were great. The guns in the game sound great even as well. And then we get to the part of why I love the sound so much, the music. The music, though. The music in this game is just epic, to say the least. Out of all the Final Fantasy games, this game definitely just has my favorite music. Like, it just has the most memorable, catchy tunes for me. I think the score is just very grand and very good. I'd argue every single track is memorable and just all around catchy. The epic tracks are epic, the fun tracks are really fun, and they just all stuck with me really well. Even the ones that are barely in the game, like they're in one part of the whole game and that's it, they stuck with me as well. It's really a testament to how great it is, and I just have nothing but positive adjectives for it because it's just that good. You'd be hard-pressed to not like the soundtrack. However, you'd be really hard-pressed to not like every single track in the game because it's just so well done. It's just really good. It sets the mood perfectly. It's just great in the game, and it's great to listen to on your own, which just makes it such a compelling soundtrack. Okay, well, I've been absolutely gushing about Final Fantasy VII for way too long now. It's time for the part of the review where I talk about some stuff that I don't like, aside from the graphics, which have aged poorly. Yeah, it's not actually a perfect game, though. Shocking. First, I'm going to talk about that PC version. That's the version I decided to play through multiple times, and I gotta say this port is ass. Sure, the Steam PC version is better than the originals, and you can add mods and stuff, but the port, it sucks. None of the special fancy additions from the PS4 or Switch or Xbox versions are here, like speeding up the game, disabling random encounters, etc., and the controls are whack. They really are. You see, your controller buttons are linked to like this weird button 1 and button 6 inputs. Like, they don't actually tell you the correct button prompt, and you can't even reconfigure the buttons either, so you'll be stuck saying press button 2 or whatever instead of pressing B, and you can't even change them. It's just extremely unintuitive. Speaking of the controls, this game has some really weird menu controls where B or circle, depending on the console, is the confirm button and A or X is the decline button. Like what? Huh? Like, what world do we live in? It's like the controls are reversed from every RPG like ever. Even on NES, A was always confirm and B was go back. But not here. B is confirm and A is go. That's just weird. Ultimately, it takes some time to get used to, and I totally forgot this was even in the game. Like, when I played it, like, when I went back to play it, I was just like, wait, what? Really? But, yeah, it really does that. My other issue, really is two issues that I mentioned, and it could just be chalked up to the PC version and taking some time to get used to, but The other issue is the weird minigames in this game. A lot of them, in fact a majority of the minigames present in this game, are just not good, like at all. Sure, they break up the pace a little bit and change the monotony, but other than that, they're just not very good. Throughout the story, you'll do these strange minigames, such as performing for these corporate people when you're undercover, or doing minigames at the casino, and almost all of them are just not that engaging. They have very poor button controls. Like, just what button you have to even press is confusing. The controls themselves are confusing and poor, and like, it's just not good. There's just so many reasons on top of it. It's like, it's clunky, it's confusing, it's not fun, like, it's just not the best. Not all of them are bad, I will say that. There are a number of good ones. I'd actually say there are a couple fun ones. This one on the motorcycle, it's great. The snowboarding one, it could be okay. But I'd say for every good or decent minigame in Final Fantasy VII, there's like 4 bad ones. Like this RTS segment. It's no Final Fantasy Tactics, that's for sure, because this sucks. They show up like every other hour in the game somewhere, and I just don't think a majority of these minigames are good. They break up the pace, but not in a very good way, and I just want a majority of them to end as fast as possible. Luckily, there's really not one that lasts for even more than like 2 minutes, minus the motorcycle. It's my only real issue with the game is that these minigames just really aren't the best, and a lot of its issues I think can be chalked up to just bad PC port that's just not very good. And I think that if you're playing any of the other versions, these minigames are probably better. They're still going to be clunky and probably a little confusing, but they won't be as shitty as they are on here, just in all honesty. And I just think that they aren't the best part of the game, that's for sure. But other than that, there's really not that much to complain about here, unless you want to dive into the nitty-gritty and start nitpicking basically everything about the game. There's just really not that much to complain about. I'd say just don't even bother with the PC version, just buy it on PS4, Switch, or Xbox One. Like, it's clear the PC version is the inferior port, as I've made clear for the reasons that I've stated. The bad controls, and the weird no. Just don't even bother. It's clearly the inferior port, and sure, you can add mods and stuff, but I'd rather just play a well-functioning game over mods any day. In the end, though, play the game. Even if you have to play the PC version, just play the game. Whether it's on the PS1, whether it's on the PC, whether it's even on your phone. Honestly, it's just worth it to play the game. There is a reason this game is held in such high regard and is so legendary. It's just because of how great it is. It's expertly paced, it's incredibly fun, the battle system is timeless, and the story is just great. While the presentation, yeah, it's pretty lackluster, the music is totally awesome still, and I have nothing but great things to say about the game for the most part. I have no issue recommending the game to literally everyone, if they even like video games, unless they like despise JRPGs, then maybe not. But you probably won't like this game if you despise JRPGs. But besides that, I think it's really worth playing. It's definitely worth your time and every penny. It's definitely one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. I'd say it's probably my favorite PS1 game of all time. It's one of my favorite games of all time. That's what I'm really saying. And I know that I'm probably super biased, and it's just like, oh, this dude's just fanboying, he's just a Square fan, he's just jizzing all over for this game. And you know what, you're probably right. I freaking love this game. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm extremely excited for the remake. There's very little I find wrong with the game. If you guys have anything wrong with the game, I'd love to hear why you don't like the game, other than the minigames and the shoddy controls for them. But as a whole, fantastic game. So, thank you for making it this far. If you made it even halfway through the video and skipped to the end, thank you. If you made it to this part, we should have like a secret code or something. Say like brick in the comments. But thank you very much for making it this far. If you like the video, comment, like, subscribe, dislike, anything. I like it. I like all forms of interaction. Follow me on Twitter. I've got a Twitter. Yeah. Have a great Christmas, everyone. Check this game out. Love it.